My path into the world of insights wasn't a straight line. There were lots of twists and turns, and if I'm honest, I think that's maybe what gave me a little bit of an edge, to not have had this clairvoyant vision that at the end of the day I wanted to be an insights leader. I was really just trying to do my very best and to nurture the curiosity I had to be a better human, and it's the very thing that drives me even today. Now, I didn't graduate from school with this dream, as I said, of becoming an insights executive. I graduated from a small school in Miami Shores, Florida, called Barry University, and then I went on to get my MBA in marketing from Baruch College, which, for those of you who live in New York, you know that that is right around, well, not the corner, but around 23rd Street. And at the time, I felt like marketing was the perfect blend for my creativity, my innate curiosity, and an entrepreneurial spirit that had been fueled inside of me because of the family that I grew up in. But the thing about going to school at Baruch is that it's hard to find a job if you're not actually looking for a job in accounting or in finance. And I had this degree in marketing. And so I did what has become a little bit of a hallmark for me. I hustled and I hustled and I hustled. I recall sending about 200 letters. They were written at the time because, you know, I'm old, to a bunch of Baruch alumni. And I was just hoping to get a chance at an informational interview. I just wanted somebody to take a chance and have a conversation with me. And when that didn't work, I scoured New York Times, Village Voice, any industry magazine I could get my hand on so that I could just find someone to connect with. And that chance actually came in the form of a woman named Elise Kane. And Elise wasn't just another Baruch alum. She was somebody who, honestly, despite her busy schedule and her messy desk, she found the time to read my letter and respond. And she honestly, to this day, I will always say this, no matter where I am, changed the course of my life. And it's something that I try to embody, to pay it forward, because honestly, there are scores of people who are incredibly talented and just waiting for somebody to respond, in this case, to a LinkedIn message. So through her, I discovered insights. Through my MBA, of course, I was exposed to market research, consumer behavior, marketing, but honestly, I didn't know about the field. I didn't know that insights existed. So from that moment, that conversation, I became incredibly fascinated with the field, because what it exposed me to was this idea that you could use curiosity, the power of data, big, thick, small, all of it, and creativity to understand people better. And if there's one thing that I am fascinated by, it's human beings. We're so weird. But not to only use that power of understanding to understand people, but businesses, and to help motivate those businesses to do better for actual human beings. So it was just a perfect, perfect storm for me. Elise also did something beautiful. She showed me that insights was not just about research, and I think many of us in this room know this. It's not just about research, and it's not just about data. Ultimately, I believe that it's about bringing your full self into the work, your creativity, your humanity, and the empathy that we all share as human beings. And so together, Elise and I brought this sort of whole-brained approach to the work, to every project, to every interaction that we had, and it worked. We had tremendous impact inside of the walls of Colgate-Palmolive, and it was beautiful. So years later, when the Insights 2020 report, which was a collaboration between Harvard Business School and Cantor Vermeer, was published, I saw that our approach actually had a name. This whole-brained insights approach wasn't actually something that we coined. It was something that I think many people were beginning to discover. So it validated something beautiful. All the things that we had been doing inside of the company, sometimes rubbing a lot of egos, because how dare we have a personality? Balancing analytical thinking and creativity, all of that was actually something that had been done and said and talked about before. And this concept of the whole-brained approach where you blend analytical and creativity, it's not new. But the reason why I am here, and I think why this conference's theme is so apt this year, is that it's never been more important, guys. It's never been more important to be whole-brained. Because the challenges that we're facing today are crazy, right? We have this beautiful thing called AI. There are things, and I'm sure we'll see many of the booths talk about this, that'll help us become more productive. It's beautiful, but it's also kind of terrifying because sitting inside of these corporations, jobs are at stake. A lot of what we thought, only we could do, they're at stake. So we have this thing that we're contending with. We also have the rise of do-it-yourself tools. Again, great, but if you sit in some organizations and they're smaller and starting up, why hire somebody? Why even spend the money with an agency when you could do it yourself? And all of that isn't enough, right, to terrify us. This is just a snapshot of this year. The layoffs have made it really hard for us and many of our brothers and sisters in other functions to be perceived as an investment area. And so a lot of big companies are like, it's a cost center, right? We could use a little bit of gut to be able to move things forward. And particularly in tech, where you have A/B testing, you can sort of experiment live and see the results of a new feature or tweak here. And so you don't actually need humans, or so they think. So I am more convinced now than ever before that the secret to making an impact, which is why we're all here, is to embrace a whole-brained approach, to elevate creativity to the same level of technical acumen. So I'll just pause for a moment. If there is one thing that you take away from my talk today, it's that being a master of your craft is just half the battle. The other half is getting people to fall in love with the perspectives that you bring. And that's when the magic happens, when left brain meets right brain, and that mastery meets magic. That's, I believe, when you become a whole-brained insights professional. So take that away, but of course, talking about it is one thing. The other thing is actually giving you guys some insights into how to do it, and how, when you go back to work next Monday, you feel equipped to try some things. And because I love humans, I know that for some people, trying new things is hard, so I could talk about it all the time. But I want to give you guys a little bit of a buffet of things that you could try to incorporate more of this whole brain thinking inside of your job. So let's get into it. Now, after a long career leading insights teams at some of the world's most influential companies, I've discovered a few ways to do this. Some of them, obviously, by trial and error, and some of them came from being open to the mystery and beauty of the diverse group of individuals I have had the pleasure to lead during my career. But before we dig into some of the tips that I want to offer you on how to become more whole-brained and exhibit those behaviors and apply them into work, let's just level set on definitions. So, in that Insights 2020 report, a whole-brain professional or whole-brain talent was described as individuals who blend analytical and creative thinking to drive business impact. They don't just rely on data to inform recommendations, but what they're able to do is to tap into creativity. And sometimes creativity, the word feels daunting. It's like, if I'm not an artist, am I creative? Yes, we all are. You put on clothes today, you made a choice, you were creating something beautiful. So people who are able to sort of tap into the creative side of themselves, those instincts, and then use it to translate the data, the insights, into this beautiful story that resonates deeply with people's hearts and minds, so that the decision makers that need to be influenced are also impacted. That is what it's all about. And there are these three skills that really are like the foundation for whole-brain insights professionals. So the first is storytelling expertise. The second is all about being adaptable and agile. And the third is cross-functional collaboration. These are like the three essential skills. And we do some of this as needed, but I think the thing that I'm trying to impress upon you today is that there's a special magic that happens when you activate your right brain and start to do all of these things more creatively. But before we go in, what do all of these skills have in common? They have something that I think, I don't know, it just sort of tickles my heart because it's very near and dear to my soul, but it's all about creativity and emotional intelligence and intuition. These are very human skills, and all too often, because we work in corporate environments, some of us on the agency side, day to day, it's not like we're forgetting these things, it's just like it feels as if it doesn't matter as much because we have a report or we have a deadline, and so these things get a little bit lost. So having an ability to not just have technical acumen but possess these things is an amazing skill. And there are things that we could do, but one field in particular where these skills can be cultivated and sharpened. I really believe the answer lies in the arts. And yes, I'm biased as a former dancer, but fields like music, dance, photography, theater, comedy, all of these fields are brimming with lessons on how to think differently about how you inspire people to feel something. And I think that if we take a little bit of lessons from these fields, it'll inspire us not only to think differently about how we engage with one another, but how we inspire people to take action, how we move through crises and rise above it, and I think more importantly, how we tell beautiful stories. You think about today's climate, I'm not going to even get into details about what's going on and what's going to be happening in 7 weeks in America, but facts and charts and poll numbers don't really tell the story, nor do they compel people to change their minds. So we just literally have to sort of copy-paste that example, and I think we know this. It's stories that resonate, and it's stories that leave people feeling quite moved. So let's dive into each of these three skills so that you have a little bit more insight into how to sort of bring it together. So in theater, let's take theater. A script is just a bunch of words on a page. And the thing that brings it to life, really, is the emotion of the performance. So similarly, data, research, verbatim, all of the things that our tools now spit out for us, in isolation, don't do enough to move people. Great insights professionals are truly like skilled performers, and you can be an introvert, you could be somebody who is sort of awkward in front of people, but it is thinking about the fact that ultimately, an artist who sits at his desk creating something beautiful doesn't necessarily have to interact with people, but what they're doing is putting a person, a feeling together and creating this beautiful bridge that makes their work incredibly memorable, and that's what we need to do. So emotion is what drives the action, honestly. And it's the key to getting stakeholders or partners, the naysayers, the people who believe that they perhaps have the answers and we don't need to rely on research and insights to help build confidence, to hear the insights, but to not just hear it, to feel them. And so I'm going to just share that storytelling has always been core to my identity. This is 15-year-old me, hopefully you can't find her, dancing. And as a dancer, for me, every performance was an opportunity to tell a story. And whether it was through the narrative of the movement, the shapes that I was making, whatever it was, my whole goal was to try and move the audience to feel something, and it was all conveyed in movement. So I think dance, like all art forms, connects people, and I think the same principle applies to insights. Now, I was at another conference recently, and somebody was like, have you ever thought about like dancing your insights? And I was like, no, I haven't, but I do think that even data visualization in some ways has been an attempt to move people by visualizing what may be really hard for people to do. So the best insights professionals, I think, know how to weave a narrative and to use art to inspire them to tell that story, whether it's through dance or through a picture or through an infographic, in ways that truly move the audience. Sorry, I know that you guys probably just wanted to watch that, but you call me later and I'll show you the whole video. So I want to leave you with this. Data is the script and emotion is the performance. And I've also just lost the video here, which is fine. So the next thing that we want to dive into here is agility and adaptability. And I think that it's the same kind of principle. In theater and in dance, when you're on stage and something goes wrong, you just have to roll with it. And so I remember distinctly being on stage and having the lights go out. And we were taught, because we rehearsed this over and over and over again, that you just got to keep moving. The audience doesn't really know that you made a mistake, but when the lights go out, you just got to kind of like pretend like nothing's happening and going and going and going. And so I think in the world of insights, because of all of these challenges that we're continually facing, all of the technological advancements that are happening, we're facing constant disruption. And so the more that we're able to sort of move with agility through this, by adopting new behaviors, and I think the J. Crew did a good job of sort of like bringing this to light. This is an opportunity to be aware of what's new and how we can sort of leverage them. And so this is the thing that I think we need to get really good at, and the arts are just full of this, adapting to new challenges and just keeping it moving. And so I leave you with this. When we're faced with challenges, and this could be everything from you have to launch that product that we wanted to do research on yesterday, or the budget for this project got cut in half, but we still need the same amount of work done. It's our responsibility to learn to pivot with purpose and not miss a single beat. And the third and final thing that I think is really a crucial and fundamental criterion in the mix of being a whole brain insights professional is cross-functional collaboration. An orchestra honestly can't really sound as beautiful as it needs to sound if there's one person who is out of sync. The same thing with a theater production. You think about the myriad people who are at work behind the scenes getting things ready. You have stagehands, you have the set designer, the actors, the directors, they're all working in concert to make things happen. And even in dance, right? Like if there's something that happens with one person, like in that dance clip that I showed you, everybody gets thrown off. It really is difficult to kind of keep things going. And so when it comes to our world, it's the same thing. A lot of us work inside of cross-functional teams. Some of us work with other peers who are doing the same thing that we're doing. But at the end of the day, it's those relationships that we build that are core to moving things forward. And you know it. When there is one person who's off, missing a deadline, not contributing as much, things can go awry very quickly. In addition, I do think that when we are able to harness the power of diverse talent from across departments, magic can happen. You have more innovative solutions and more creative approaches into the way that you might come to other people to convince them to do something differently based on what you have learned. And so this is an incredibly important skill. Now, all of these things are really important, and I just want to say that collaboration is something that was ingrained in me early on as well. I'll just tell a little story. So, I was an arts and education musical teacher alongside a friend of mine with this company called the Bronx Arts Ensemble. They send people into the Bronx to schools and we teach, but it was always an interesting thing to collaborate with her on something that I felt like I could do myself. And I also was a dancer for many years with the Rod Rogers Dance Company, which exists in New York City. And honestly, working together to create something beautiful in both instances was always something that I was working towards, and I learned so much. But if there's anything I want to just share with you from here is that there were so many solutions that would come out because I had a collaborator. It's actually something that I miss, not having the opportunity to work in the dance world as much, being around people who are really working towards a common goal. And so that's something I implore you. It's about building connections with the people with whom you work, and ensuring that everybody is working towards a common goal. So don't play solo if you can. Remember that it's all about creating harmony. So I understand that not everybody in this room is actually from the world of the arts, like I am. And you might be thinking, Nikia, this is great. These things make sense to me, and I really appreciate you coming on stage. But how do I begin to become a little bit more artsy so that my world is enriched in the ways that you're saying? The good news is I have 6 ways. So I don't think you should worry. I think there are things that you can all do. It's not only in the domain of artists, it's something that you could start to build even in the smallest way. So let's start with the first one. The first thing that I'd encourage you to do is to take advantage of the fact that you're in New York City. The beautiful organizing committee has probably already thought of things that you could do. I heard some of them mentioned, but explore local arts events. And whether it's a concert, going to the library, a museum, a dance performance, there are things that are out there for you to tap into, if you could find the time, that'll help inspire creative solutions to the problems that you've been facing at work all the time. And you don't have to be an expert. I think that's the important thing to know. Just being in a space where you get to observe how artists move and think and create does something to the brain, right? Because even though we feel like we are intellectual beings who can tackle problems by thinking about it, if you were exposed to the arts, if you are, even doing something as different as taking a different way home, what it does is that it starts to activate some new neural connections in your brain, which can inspire a lot of wonderful new thinking. And so my suggestion for you is, and this is a tip, you don't have to take it, the next time that you're stuck on a work problem, or you're in a situation where you're feeling like there's an impasse, ask yourself the question, how might an artist interpret this? It may feel strange at first, that's the point though, but the entire job here is to get you to sort of get outside of your mind and to do something differently and to think about complex problems in new ways. So the second thing that I think you could do is to take a beginner's class. Now, this might seem a little bit strange too, but it really is a beautiful thing to, if you are into this, put yourself in a situation where you're learning something new. It builds agility, which we talked about earlier, and adaptability, and it also fuels you with a kind of approach to taking on new challenges that I think is really rampant in our field. If you're feeling adventurous, you might even consider taking an improv class, a comedy class, a pottery class, maybe even dance. We didn't talk about this, but I will be having dance classes this evening. This is also a joke. It's a terrible joke. I'm not teaching dance classes. For those of you guys who were excited, let me know. Maybe it's something that I can add to my portfolio career. But engaging in an art form and taking a class can go a long way to putting you in a position to just be comfortable with newness. And that's the biggest thing that I think helps when you're faced with adversity and change. Anything could happen, and you aren't always prepared for it, but I do think taking a class introduces beginner's mindset and a kind of humility that allows us to be open to new ways of solving problems. Highly recommend. So, the third is to integrate creative practices into your routine. And so, I think about what my days are like and what my weeks are like. And honestly, as a mother of two young kids, it's really hard to think about like integrating anything. But it doesn't have to be time consuming, nor does it have to be intimidating. There are things that are small that you could start, like sketching or journaling in a notebook, or even experimenting with like a new genre of music. For those of you guys who have long commutes or take the subway, instead of listening to the same songs from the greatest hits of whatever your favorite band is, try something experimental, avant-garde, and new. It might feel strange and odd because it's not your preference to listen to that type of music, but what it does is that it opens your brain up to something uncomfortable, and ultimately these are all things that we deal with at work. The person who makes you uncomfortable, but like they're your boss. Sorry, this is from personal experience. But yeah, we absolutely have to build these muscles, and I think finding ways to build it into your daily and weekly routine prepares you a little bit more for dealing with it at work. Because guess what? We spend, I think, the majority of our time during the week at work with other people. Okay, so the other is something that you can apply more easily because it is something you can do in your work every day. Collaborating with creatives on your storytelling journey, I think, is a wonderful thing that everybody should try if you have a partner inside of your company, your team, your department who leans creative. Because we've just talked about it, right? To craft narratives that truly resonate and are emotionally stirring, you do need to sort of like think a little bit more about like how you construct the narrative and even how you display the information and the tactics you use to socialize your thoughts. And so next week, or whenever it is you have your next presentation, I'd encourage you to think about the designers, the strategists, maybe even the marketers in the room with whom you feel confident in that relationship, maybe even somebody who you don't work with that much but you're inspired by, and brainstorm together. Let them know this is the situation that we're trying to tackle. This is the work that I led to try and tackle the situation. Most importantly, and I think this is where creatives come into hand and really have a beautiful influence, who is the audience that you're trying to appeal to? And I think all too often, we're not thinking about the audience and the vibe that they're bringing and what it is we want to do to move them. And so the way that we might position our perspective for the C-suite is different than the way we would frame that perspective for people who are a little bit more junior. And so the way that you might want to sort of bring that through, it'll be different, but you should put that challenge out to a friend in the company and say, hey, you and I don't have to, we don't work together regularly, but like I really want to get your perspective on how you might tailor this story for this group. And it might be completely aligned with what you were thinking, but the magic happens when you at least try and leave yourselves open to seeing what they might come up with. So the next time that you're presenting any kind of story, any data, any insights to stakeholders, partners, or senior leadership, and your goal is to inspire them to feel something, to act differently, bring a creative partner to the table, schedule time to just brainstorm ideas, and you might be actually quite surprised at what comes through, because ultimately our job is to create like a transformation, right? Like even as I stand in front of you, one of the things that I'm trying to do is to leave you feeling a little bit changed from when you first laid eyes on me. The other thing that I think is really a kind of passive activity that doesn't take too much for you to start to employ is consuming more artistic media. And this is not social media, by the way. That's not more artistic. No matter how good a job the content creators do, I would not recommend it as the arts. So if you're comfortable absorbing more than doing, more than experimenting, I'd suggest starting by looking at, I don't know, some documentaries from famous artists and musicians, to read books about creativity, and maybe even listen to some podcasts that explore how artists have approached their creative process. And I believe that simply by exposing yourselves to the ideas, and this is passively, there's something shifting inside of your mind about the way that you might approach a particular problem. So, a little bit of homework. Again, after you watch the next documentary or listen to the next podcast that brings some artist, not a founder of a tech company, an artist or a musician or somebody in the arts fields, and they're bringing out a little bit of insight into their creative process, ask yourself the question, I wonder how they would deal with a challenge or roadblock, given that they are an artist. Like, how might they do it? And again, it's not about trying to do what they do, but to leave yourself open to being inspired to do something different, because there's so many parallels between the way that artists approach their work and problems and the creative process and the way that we have to like compel people to listen to us and to take our perspectives. Okay, finally, the sixth tip that I have for you, and perhaps the most important given how essential storytelling is in our field and how much more crucial it'll continue to be, I would suggest that you practice storytelling in your work. And this is not practicing public speaking or getting up in front of a crowd to deliver a speech. This is much more about trying to figure out how to weave disparate things together in a narrative that is juicy and compelling and rich and memorable. I used to like to tell my team that we are not only dot collectors, we are dot connectors. And I think that practice of storytelling is what gets gets that really, really good. So, how do you do it? I think the next time that you're presenting, think about the last time that you watched a good Netflix show. Sorry. There was like a joke in there, but it's only for me because I don't know how good the shows are, but whatever. But think about the next show that you watch after you watch it. What makes it good? What makes you want to keep on binging and looking at it? It's often because they start with some problem. There's a character or a set of characters in need. There's suspense, and they draw it out. And I think that's where your data comes in. You give a little bit of juice, a little bit of facts, and then at some point there's resolution. You come in and you're like, well, based on all of this, like, here's what's gonna happen. She gets the guy, he gets the guy, whatever.